what he does for people is very much in the personal development space. So it's about changing your life and transforming yourself to be the best that you can be. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself. Welcome to the show. And tell us a little about what do you do, what do you do with Be Limitless, and what is your story? Where did you come from with all of this?
Oh, well, where I started with Be Limitless. Be Limitless has now become a portal that encompasses a lot of the stuff that we do. Because we deal with a lot of the areas or different areas in, let's call it the human capability, it really opens quite a box to all different kinds of aspects of us and who we are as human beings. So when we first started, when we were doing with little, small different areas of people, it's really come together and now it's become more holistic. And to work with each slice individually, it just becomes a real, it's just quite colossal. So Be Limitless has been created to put everything under one umbrella so that people can hit one place and see all the things that we do. Because we deal with all the way from the mind, down to the brain, into the body, and all of these systems just work very differently, and we need different things for each of these systems. So when it comes down to personal development, the strategies that we use for life in general, that's more of a mind thing. But the brain itself is a perfect structure that's a central, it's your CPU, the central processing unit of how it runs all the systems in your body. So it's as a structure, it has its own unique way of operating. And through the body, we need to address things like nutrition and how your body functions and getting your body healthy. So we look at these things in a very different light. However, they all come together to make us who we are, make us as a human being.
Okay, Andrew, so just want to find out, give us a little bit more detail of, you said there's many different aspects to what you do. You've got the mind, you've got the brain, you've got the body. How do they all work together? What specific solutions do you have for each one, and how do they link to each other?
Well, the way they basically link to each other is essentially through the brain. The brain is the central nervous system. But the brain has a capacity to keep you alive, but it doesn't really have a reference point to keep you well. And this is where the mental strategies of life come into play. But the brain does have an imprintment of what it needs to do. So in other words, the brain will live more in reaction. So how you will react to a particular situation. Like for example, if you heard a loud bang and you think it's a gun, you know, the brain will kick in and it will get all that fight and flight going inside of you. Where a mental strategy, a mind can distill saying, no, it's not a gun, it's just a loud noise outside, etc. So there's a very different distinction there. And the brain will then flood the body with all different chemicals and hormones, etc.
Okay, Andrew, so you've basically said that you've got all these different aspects to being a human being. I mean, we're multidimensional, aren't we? We've got the mind and the body and the brain and all of those kind of things. What specific tools and strategies and solutions do you have for each of those specific areas, and how do they link to each other? Because obviously they're linked, but from your perspective and from what you've come across and the information you have, how do they link and what are they specifically?
Well, let's take a look from the point of view of first the body. To have a healthy body will give you a healthy brain, and having a healthy brain gives you a healthy mind. And each of these systems require certain nutrition. So the body will require certain, like the difference between proteins or carbohydrates, for an example. And then the brain needs a particular kind of nutrition, and then the mind needs nutrition. We need to feed our psychology. And oftentimes people, they take their bodies to gym, but they never really work out the mind. And the mind and the brain are two separate things. Just as, for example, like your lungs and your heart, they're two separate things, but they're organs which work together and as a system create a human being.
And then you can breathe and live and have...
That's what they do, yeah. So the one will do a particular function, the other one does another function, but together they actually make up the entire system.
Okay, so the mind is the part of you that has the choice, you could say, and the brain is the thing that's like the slave to the mind. Is it that?
Not necessarily, no. The brain is the instrument that the mind uses.
Okay.
And we can get very philosophical about this in the sense where your mind is just sort of computations that your brain spits out just by a chemical process. But there's a lot of things to us. For example, we have a physical aspect to ourselves, and we have an energetic aspect to ourselves. The same as a light bulb has a physical aspect, but when you put electricity through it, now it produces light. So the mind and the brain they use the same thing, but they're different things altogether.
Okay, and then so the tools that you have, I remember you were speaking about, you've got Agora and the Harlequin and those kind of things. Please just tell us a little bit about what is Agora, what is Harlequin, what are all of these things, and you also do a lot of brain training as well. I mean, I've had the experience of having a brain training session, which was quite a lot of fun, and I realized that I've got some sort of alpha that's very high or something like that. But it was very interesting to find out that my brain has different frequencies that it's pulsing out. What are the different things that you do in the personal development space, and tell us a little about this brain training as well.
Well, starting at the brain training, the way that the brain training works is we look at the frequencies throughout the brain. So this is the thing where it's a very scientific process. It was developed in the 60s.
Wow.
So it's been around for decades. There's a myriad of let's call it case studies and documentation of the results that this produces. Because within inside our brains, the brain has an imprintment of how we behave and how we actually process information. And we all know the classic idea that the left side of the brain and we have the right side of the brain. And those hemispheres are very true in the sense where your left side needs information and your right side needs experience. And the two together is what makes up how essentially we process the world.
Oh, wow.
So but that's at the level of a brain. Now brain training puts all those frequencies back where they belong.
Oh.
Because as we're growing up, we come into contact with stresses or traumas, and it's the things that the brain perceives. It's got very little to do with how we perceive the world.
Okay.
And those imprintments have a huge influence on how we behave and how we perceive
what
the
we
world.
react to. So if something were to happen to me, and like I get broken into or something bad, trauma, I might go, oh, whatever, you know, so what? And you might get into a total state of freak out and not know what to do with yourself. So it's dependent on also the person and the choices that you make in reaction to what goes on in your experience.
For sure, yes.
And then the brain obviously picks up that information as frequency or pulsing, or what? How does that?
Well, talking about the brain training specifically, the way the brain training works is, as your brain is operating through frequency, and the main frequencies that we'll work with, starting from the bottom, is delta, which is normally deep sleep, going into theta, which is your dreaming state, then you'll go into alpha, which is you're feeling good, it's your vitality, it's your creativity, memory, and then into your awakened consciousness, which is beta.
Okay.
So to give you a simple example, when you're out running and having a good jog, you're more in the beta frequency, and when you're having a really good sleep, you're going into the theta, into the delta range. So those are very simple ways to look at it. But these frequencies operate throughout your whole brain.
Your brain all the time?
They're in your brain the whole time.
Okay, so I can't say my brain is now in alpha because I'm meditating.
No, not really, not really. They are the way that it peaks. So the collective way of looking at it, it doesn't necessarily operate like it.
And what about those things that you listen to, the alpha, they say that it's a deep meditative thing that takes your brain into alpha, and you put this earphone on, because I've got a couple of those where you put the earphones on and the one is coming at this level and the other one's coming at that level, and it's supposed to get your brain into a frequency. How does that?
Well, that stuff's called entrainment.
Okay. And
entrainment it's a very simple way of doing it, and what it does is it actually induces a particular frequency into the brain. So for an example, with let's call it a binaural beat, you'll induce 200 hertz in one ear and 210 hertz in the other ear. Your brain will make up the difference. Okay. And the difference is 10 hertz, which puts you into the alpha frequency.
Okay. And does your brain actually do that? So it does actually
start to induce the frequency. The only thing with the entrainment is it induces frequency across the whole brain.
Oh.
Now, there's a benefit of inducing frequency, and there's a huge detriment to inducing frequency, because, for an example, if I start putting a lot of alpha or slow frequencies in the front of my head, I will start producing tendencies like ADD, because these are sleep frequencies, or let's call them slow frequencies.
Okay.
And it almost adds like we're starting to put sleep frequencies in front of the brain. So we want these frequencies to be at the back of our head. Okay. So when we go to sleep, that we'll process it better. Now, we can actually, and we do this at Brain Trainer.
Okay.
We can induce frequency, and then what we do is we teach the brain where to put that frequency. So if your alpha frequencies are low, which is going to affect your short-term memory, it's going to affect your vitality, your creativity, and if they're reversed, so let's say for an example, the alpha frequency is more on the left side of your head, we want it more on the right.
That's what you said about mine?
Yes.
Mine was swapped around?
Yes, we have.
I don't mind, you can bring up my stuff, it's fine, I have trauma and stuff, it's fine, all of us have it. So you said, but it's true, we all have spaces in our lives where we've had trauma, and it was amazing that you could actually pick that up, because I've obviously done the brain training session myself, and it brought up, there's trauma here, there's trauma there, that happened there, and I'm, wow, you could pick that up from a scan on my brain.
Yeah.
And then I remember the training thing was like little tones, and from my understanding that's different to the alpha wave that you would put through your whole brain, because it's allowing your brain to actually start to create that itself and balance.
Yeah, well what we do is when we use an EEG,
Yeah.
which is an electroencephalograph,
Okay.
when we put the electrodes actually on the brain, we
Yes.
can, I'm going to use it as an example. It's kind of comparable to a surgeon going into a specific place, and where we put the electrode, we will train the brain in a very specific area.
Okay.
The brain is this amazing organ that will learn, and
Okay.
these tones that you are hearing, it learns what the association between different frequencies are, and then when you're in a particular range, which is where we want the brain to function, or how we want the brain to function, for example, moving the alpha to the correct side, which is the right side of the brain, they're still going to be on both sides of the brain, but we want the predominance of it to be on the one side. And as it moves across, the tones give your brain a reward. So when the reward happens, your brain realizes that it likes that, it really enjoys it, so it follows that. So your brain does all the work itself. It doesn't affect your brain in any way in the sense where it will make it negative or, you know, turn accountants into artists or something like that. It doesn't work like that.
That would be quite interesting. You're doing the math, the calculations. La, 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 la. That would be fun.
No,
okay, good. Did you do my counting? Oh no, I gave you an artwork instead.
What's your picture?
My tax. Okay, that's it.